Hello, welcome to another episode of Unlocked. Today, Gene Hammett is going to share with us a framework for having tough conversations. Who's ever had a tough conversation? Raise your hand. Yes, we have all had to have them, either in our personal life or in our professional life. We all have them. And this framework is pretty simple, but it's the genius in which he's put the order together that really, I think, is the gold there. And I think that that's what we need to pay attention to in this. So Gene is a leading expert in high growth company culture and leadership. He's done this for decades. He's interviewed more than 530 high growth companies, CEOs of high growth companies, to understand the core principles of fast growth and how they manage their cultures inside. He does this on his own podcast. It's called the Growth Think Tank Podcast. So you can go check that out. You can find him on LinkedIn and on Instagram. But he consults these leaders and teams. He has worked with a dozen companies on the Inc. 5000 list. He's experienced in the idea of coaching and the idea of communication and the idea of tough conversations, which is why he is writing a book about that with his wife. So by the time you listen to this, maybe it's already out, maybe it's not, but we're going to talk about that framework here on the show. So without further ado, here we come, Gene. Gene, awesome having you here, man. I really appreciate it.
Excited to be here, Scott.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some awesome stuff today because we're going to talk about tough conversations. I don't know if everybody thinks they're awesome, but I think they're awesome. And you clearly think they're awesome because you guys are writing a book on this thing, right?
I am. Me and my wife, my co-writer, co-founder of the company, been looking at how do we write the next book? We've both written one. And we decided to write something together. And this is one of the conversations that comes up most often inside of coaching and leadership development.
So is it more, how do I have the tough conversation, or, which I'm probably going to say yes, or is it, how do I react to this conversation that was had with me?
It's mostly the first part, right? There's avoidance out there and it's rampant. People are afraid to engage in these tough conversations. And we also feel like some of the books out there that have been written about this subject, I'm not throwing anyone on the bus. I think they've done really good work, but they're not actually supporting you in how to deliver that conversation. They're touching on it, but we built a framework that really helps people understand the flow, how to prepare for them, which is kind of make a plan as part of that framework. And it really is about delivering them. Now, hopefully people that read them also are open to receiving those tough conversations, because it goes both ways.
Yes, it does. So let's hone in on this for just a second, because we all have to have them. Now, you're writing this with your wife. So I imagine there's some tough conversations you've had to have in a personal relationship, just as well as professional. And I mean, does this framework work for both situations?
I think so. I mean, I don't think we're immune, because, a lot of professionals, I'm an executive coach. That's my core business. And we do leadership development with mid-managers and helping them become leaders. The conversations, specifically with my wife, this really helped us understand each other better. We went through couples counseling at one point in time. And, one of the things in there is listen to the other person and repeat back what they're saying as a way to let them know that you understand them. Even if you don't agree, you repeat it back. Is that what you're saying? It's a very simple concept that you learn in a personal life through some hard challenges that you can bring over into professional. And so, this framework can be used for both.
So what I hear you saying is we should repeat back the things that you see what I did there?
Yep, I did.
Yeah.
Got it right away.
Okay, good. All right. So talk about that then. Okay, so this framework, the book's coming out, if it's not out already, right, by the time of this show. And you give away this framework and this idea, and you talk about this framework. Introduce me to the framework. I think we've heard some different things, but I want to hear your ideas here.
So it's a lot to unpack in here, and I can go into specific areas if we want to dive into specific elements of it. We've written the first draft. We've written actually the second draft now, and we're in the editing phase, which is not fun. It is so not fun to put, be questioned on, is this the right word choice? And, have you connected the dots? And is this clear enough? And you got to cut things. Like, I don't know if you've been through the editing process. It's horrible.
I'm starting to go through that now with mine. So it's, yeah.
I mean, imagine this. You do a lot of speaking, because I was checking out your website, what you're up to, and you've probably done this before. Hey, I think I've got 30 minutes for this speech. I can't put every story in there, and I can't put even the things I really love. So I got to pick just the best. And that's what writing and editing's like. You can't put everything in there. You got to get it zeroed into just the core essence. And so it's a very difficult process, because we want to make the best book possible. We also aim to make something really palatable and it's usable. So we're aiming at probably 20,000 words, which is probably going to put it in the 100-page range.
Okay, cool. So you're packing a lot in 100 pages. Now, let's just say 100 pages, it may sound like a lot, but it's that's a compressed book when we're talking about tough conversations and this framework you introduce in there, right? So how do you just like give us the high levels so that, if we want to dive deeper, we can.
So we came up with this with clients. Like we were having it come up all the time. Like there's so many conversations out there that are needed. And there's a certain elements that I use inside my coaching. One of them I call the magic question. And this is sort of it's in the framework, and I'll give you the framework in a second, but it's, what's the missing conversation that hasn't happened yet? I didn't claim to write this question. It comes from a lot of people who are supporting others and therapists and whatnot, but I have used it so many times with clients, because they'll tell me about something that's not the way they expect it to be. Someone's out of alignment. And I go, but what's the missing conversation that you haven't had yet? And they'll talk about it, and it's usually surface level. The idea is to get to the real heart of it. And so little tools like that are inside this framework, is a way to get to the real conversation you have. And I can give you examples if you want, but the overall framework follows empathetic. And I'm an engineer. I had to ask my wife, I'm like, how do you even spell empathetic? It's a lot of letters. It's 10 different parts to this. Some are much more in depth than others, but there's 10 elements to really delivering a tough conversation. And I think you want to have, almost all of them in every conversation. Some of them are not needed in types of conversations, but I feel like you can actually stretch it and use every 10 steps inside of every tough conversation.
Okay. Before we get into a couple of those things, because we don't have to go through all 10, right? I just want you to tease a few of them though.
Yeah.
So give me an example of the magic question thing. I do want an example of that. I want to see how you could use it. Let's frame it up.
I had a client of mine who went on vacation, and he had an employee that didn't do their work. He was supposed to be having, fun, disconnecting, and literally not checking in every day to make sure everyone's, doing the work. And he comes back and he goes, not only did they not do the work, we made a promise to the client, so now we're behind. We got to make up the work. And so I'm talking to him about, what's the missing conversation? He goes, well, it's about how we're going to make up the work. How are they going to get the hours in? How are we going to catch up? And I said, is that really the missing conversation? He thought about it for a second, and we probed a little bit. We discussed different options, and finally he comes back and is like, well, they didn't work while I was on vacation. Are they really committed to being here? And all of a sudden I felt like, okay, that's the deeper conversation. That's the one that's like gets to the heart of it. It's not about how we're going to make it up, because if they're not committed, we'll never make it up. But he had the conversation, and it was a little bit uncomfortable for both of them, but they discussed it. They created a plan together. All this is in the framework. And 4 months later, I'm talking with him again. He goes, ever since that day, this person has been much more committed, much more engaged. The work is getting done. Really, just things have changed. And that's really what we're looking for inside of these tough conversations is there's a real change in behavior and understanding, and people are aligned. And it all started with, what's the real conversation? And he decided, are you committed to working here?
Okay. So it's the surface level problem is what people are trying to address. Like, how do I get this person to do their work when I'm out of town?
Yeah.
Like totally, like, this is the obvious thing I'm trying to fix. How do I get this person to work? But you're saying it's deeper. And that's because what's going to happen is this guy's going to go out of town again, and the guy's still not going to do his work. Yeah. So he's going to, well, I thought we fixed this last time. But you're saying when we have the deeper conversation, we're addressing the core issue, therefore alleviating symptoms from coming back up later.
And it makes sense, Scott. You explained it really well. But here's the problem. You know this as well as I do, given the work that you do. When you're emotionally attached to what's going on, you're inside the issue yourself. It's really hard to have perspective and really understand and see it fully. We as coaches do this all the time for people. We're able to have these different perspectives, and that's the value of coaching in one way. It's just literally getting someone to see something from a new angle, the same problem. Nothing's changed about the problem. I'm just asking him to look at the deeper element of it. And he's like, oh, that's it. And that's the conversation he had. And that's where the change of behavior happens, not in, oh, we got to make up the time.
Yes. Okay. So let's look at empathetic. Let's look at that and give me some of the highlights. I don't know, pick 3 of your letters that were before you don't have to think about how spelling the whole thing, I don't know, pick a few, like give us some gold.
Let's start with the hardest one, which is make a plan. So before the conversation, you should have your thoughts together. We all agree to this, right? We plan speeches that we deliver in advance to audiences. We think about what we want to say, how we want to say it. We get it organized because it's a big moment, right? When you're addressing an audience, we all agree to that, right?
Sure. Yeah. Good.
But when it's a one-on-one person, too often, well, most people avoid them until it's too late, or it gets really to the point where you can't avoid it anymore. It's like, toxic or something. And so what we ask you is, don't wait to that point, but make a plan. And so we actually give you probably about a dozen questions that allow you to look at different perspectives. A few of my favorites are, how do you expect this person to react inside this? So if you know someone's going to be sensitive, you're going to frame this differently than someone that might be a little bit more defensive. Or if someone's going to be direct back with you, or they're going to blame someone else, you want to know that. Another question inside there is, who do you need to be to deliver this conversation? It's one of my favorite questions because I work on the deeper side of this. I'll have someone that's really frustrated about these tough conversations. Someone's out of alignment. And after we go through the entire, make a plan part of it, I will say that exact question, who do you need to be to deliver this? And they'll go, oh, I need to be patient, or I need to be direct. This is the time for me to be really direct. I've been not setting clear enough expectations, and that's the reason why we're out of alignment. Or they may say, I need to just be understanding. And so getting them to presence and be intentional about who they need to be is part of that make a plan to get and deliver the right conversation, the right way, the right tone, right word choice, and all of that stuff. So make a plan is probably the meatier part of the 10 steps, because it requires a lot to be prepared.
That's good.
Any questions about make a plan?
Who do you need to be to deliver this? So I like how you're doing this introspective, outer thing is like, who are they? How are they going to interpret this? How are they going to look at it? And you may be right, you may be wrong, depending on whatever, but at least it's putting you in the idea of empathy. And you're trying to go, okay, let me take myself out of this and think about them for a second. And then who do I need to be to match that? Who do I need to be for them? And who do I need to be for myself to make sure that I'm upholding my own values, but also making sure that I'm getting the impact that I need to out of them, right? And so that's really good. Who do I need to be? Okay, I love that. No, let's go on. Next one. I like this. Go.
Let's go through an easy one. And this one happens after the conversation, right? So after the conversation is had, there's some relief that happens. There's a little bit of like, I should have had this sooner. But really what I want to remind people of is, how do you follow up after a difficult conversation or a tough conversation? And I think that it's the last C. Let them know you care. So I give some examples inside the book, but it's simply, if you talked about using that same example, are you committed to the company? You don't just accept that they're committed. You follow up with maybe a text message 24 hours later. Maybe it's 48 hours later. It's like, hey, we had a really incredible conversation and understanding. I want to let you know, we really care about you being here. And I'm curious, what has run through your thoughts since we've last talked? And it can be a text message, which most people think a difficult conversation can be handled by text and emails, which is not true. But the follow-up and the aftercare can be had in a more informal way. If you still need to have another conversation, I would suggest you having that face-to-face, either video or actual, in person. But just sending a message afterwards saying that you care about the person in some way because you've gone through this together adds to building trust and speeds that trust. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it does. And
most people don't think about it. They think we had the conversation. That was it.
And it's done. And yeah, we were on the same page when we left the room. They said, okay. And I said, cool. And, like we just go on. I think one of the things that I've found, especially with some of the coaching that I'll do, is that, and managing or coaching introverts is like, they need to process a lot. They're just like, they're digesting everything that just happened, going back, thinking about it, noodling on it a little bit. And then maybe they do have some other questions they want to address. But if they assume the conversation's done and that it's like, I don't want to bother them anymore. Like they seemed annoyed and that, or like it was already a hard thing. And I don't want to, bring it back up or whatever. Right. So I think by the leader going back and addressing it, I think there's an open door there again saying, hey, that wasn't done. It's not a one and done. It's like, hey, there's more. I'm open. So that's cool.
And we can go through another one because we went through something before the conversation. We've just gone through something after the conversation. The bulk of the letters of empathetic are during the conversation, but they're much easier and much more kind of understanding because it's how you're showing up and really keeping you front and center on the key elements of delivering a message that makes a difference.
Okay. So give me one of those. Give me one. Yeah. I want to use it with my wife later because
this is a great one with wives.
Okay, good. Go.
H in empathetic is for hold your tongue, which is about listening, truly listening to what they've got to say. So a lot of people think that a difficult conversation is, I want them to understand my perspective. And I get the concept behind that, but that's not really powerful communication. You want to listen to what their perspective is. You want them to feel heard, understood, valued. So you've got to hold your tongue and listen to them fully. You want to listen beyond the words that they're saying. You might ask a few questions to let them continue that unpacking and processing. And, one example is if you're listening, are they blaming someone else or are they taking ownership? Because if they're blaming someone else, there's a question in there that you really owe them to ask. How did you contribute to this? Whatever the problem may be. But holding your tongue, how it works with our wives is sometimes, I don't know how long you've been married, Skot.
20 to almost 21 years this month.
This month? What day?
16th.
21 years on the 17th.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Look at that, man. Look at that.
Is it a Friday? You were married?
I think so. Yeah.
And we were on a Saturday.
Really? That's
17th.
crazy. Wow. Look at
All right.
that.
So you know this
Yeah.
one as well as anyone. You probably learned it the hard way.
Okay.
Sometimes your wife doesn't want you to fix the problem. What does she want you to do?
Dang it. No, she always wants me to fix it. She wants to tell me her problem, and then she wants me to fix all of their stuff. And my idea is always brilliant. So of course she wants me to fix it, right?
Is that the truth?
No,
What does she
totally
want?
not. Totally not. Um, she wants me to shut up. She wants me to just like listen and care and just give her space to vent.
Probably 80, 90% of the time, a woman doesn't share with you her troubles and her pain and her frustrations because she wants you to fix it. She wants you to truly just listen. And I think about that inside of these type of conversations is it's space not for you to make your ideas clear and your expectations and say, this is how it is. It's to truly listen to them. And so that they feel understood, feel valued, because their behaviors don't change because you've told them to do it. For example, we'll use wives again. You ever told your wife to be calm? Calm down?
No, but I have learned to do this. I don't know if this helps anymore. I don't know if anybody's listening to this. I'm using the downward like chill out motion, which obviously also doesn't do very well.
Yeah, you can't tell someone to be calm, right? They have to discover it for themselves. So if you're holding your tongue inside this and you truly are listening and you are giving them, maybe they're frustrated and you're listening to this, all of a sudden they'll go, you know what? I really shouldn't be as frustrated. I should calm down. And that's much more powerful, the introspective aspect of that, than you telling them how they should behave, because that we know that just doesn't work with our wives. It doesn't work with our employees. It doesn't really work with ourselves. Like if someone tells you to calm down, rile you up too.
Okay.
So
that's good.
That's part of the framework that those are just part of the tools that we use inside this to help people have these tough conversations when it means the most.
That's really good. And they're pretty fundamental, right? Like I think that we've heard, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Like we've heard these things from our mom growing up or whatever for a long time of these mantras. I think that the framework and the flow you put it in is where the gold's going to come. Okay. And doing the intentional behaviors of like planning, making a plan. How many of us seriously do that? Whether it's just like a quick plan in our head, or we got to have this conversation. So we go into it and we have it, now us as coaches, I think our clients tend to come to us and say, hey, I've got this issue. I've got this, whatever. I need to have this conversation. And we talk through it with them a bit. So, we have some people that are doing it, but I think for the most part, we've got so many things to do, so many fires we're putting out. This is just another task on our list, and we just treat it that way and hope that it'll go away so we don't have to have it anymore.
So that is the work we've been working on to really make it clear, because we feel like a lot of people struggle with these at work, at home too. And we want to create this book called How Do You Have Tough Conversations? It really is. I didn't frame the whole entire, leadership is such a big topic. And we wrote a book on leadership and we realized it was too big. No one's going to really read, 400 pages about leadership. And so we've decided to break it into smaller chunks, create a series of books. And right now the working title for this is the Nothing But Tactics series for leaders. So we really are excited about sharing it with your audience and sharing, these little tools. Yes, a lot of it's common sense, but how common is common sense? It's sometimes we get wrapped up and we aren't having the conversations, which is important to do, but we also want to do them effectively. And so that's what this framework really is meant to do.
That's awesome. And I love how you're breaking it up. Because you're right. I mean, especially with some of our clients, like they just don't have the time, or they just need quick chunks and quick bite-sized things and things that I can digest, and putting together in a series will help you kind of build out intentionally what that's going to be on that journey. And so then talking about this idea, I mean, given this book is almost like a coaching tool, right? For other people, for those who don't have a coach, right? And this is going to be a little commercial for coaching out there. And I'll just put it out there. You're a coach. You've been doing this for a long time. I'm a coach. And I mean, what have you seen the value for your clients like in this space? What's been the value there for them?
There's a lot of different angles I could look at this. And I have a coach too. Like, I believe in this. I'm not a hypocrite. It is the main way we make a living is by coaching executives, their teams, and turning managers and leaders through coaching. But I believe that coaching, at the core essence of it, is we're having conversations with someone that we're not having with others. And if someone's really professional in that, and they're aiming for growth and for you to transform, it is something that you're not getting elsewhere. When you're talking to your executives or your spouse or someone else on the team and you're frustrated, that's not necessarily the best person to go to. They're emotionally attached. They may see it from a different perspective, but it's not helping you because they're not really able to get you to presence around what's going on. They're not used to the power of questions inside of the coaching relationship. And so I believe the value of coaching is we're having conversations that we aren't having elsewhere. And part of that's just to get more clear about our thoughts and being more intentional. And, part of it's new ideas, part of it's different perspectives, reframing things. There's so many elements to it, but it's just conversations that you're not having elsewhere.
That's brilliant. I love it. And it's so true. How often are our clients, even those work conversations, they're not having those work conversations. They're busy in their day-to-day stuff, and they're not having these conversations. When they take a minute, a chunk of time to have that with us, it's opening up these doors that probably would have remained closed for a long time, or they just would have ran into them multiple times before realizing that they did open. So that's really good. I appreciate that. And tell me and us about, so the book's not launched yet, but where can people find out more about you in order to get access to the book and get access to you?
I'm going to give you the framework. We have this framework. We have a tool, and there's no opt-in required. My clients are usually 10 million, 20 million. They don't really want to put an email address in there because they don't want, a bunch of more spam. So we're going to completely give it to you. So if you just go to genehammett.com, that's my kind of home base for the work that we do. The podcast is there, Growth Think Tank. But to get the framework, it's just genehammett.com/tough conversations.
That's a brilliant URL, Gene. Well done.
Well, just Gene Hammett, and I get to control what I want to put after that. And it's a simple framework. I told you that the book might be 100 pages. This is like 5 pages or 6 pages. And so this is the tool we've been using for 4 years with clients. We've just expanding it and really adding more depth and support when the book comes out. So if you are, game to support us, you want to go deeper with this, maybe you want to share it with people on your team, look for Tough Conversations where you buy books.
Cool. Awesome. Gene, brilliant, dude. I love your brain. I love the way you think about things, and I'll be sure to stay in touch with you and follow you wherever I can. So appreciate it, man.
Skot, thanks for having me.
I love the magic question. What is the conversation that needs to happen that we haven't had yet? That deeper connection conversation, the deeper issue. What's the real core thing that we really need to address to make sure that we're making progress in what we're doing here, so this doesn't just reoccur over and over and over again? And then going over a few letters, we didn't go through the whole empathetic framework, but just giving us a taste of before the conversation, make a plan. After the conversation, let's care, let's follow up, let's make sure they know that we've heard them and that we're addressing this thing as we go further into the future. And then in the midst of this conversation, you know what? He says, hold your tongue. I just say, just shut up for a second. Just shut up. Like, I know that your idea is brilliant. I know that you want to be heard. You want to be understood. You want to make your point just that much more. But I think more important, and Gene obviously thinks the same, that you listen and ask questions and move through the conversation that way. Then present your ideas. The gate will be open. If you've created an environment of listening, then hopefully you get that from the other side. Gene, it's really, really cool to have talked to you. And it's even cooler that our anniversaries are like 2 days apart, like literally to the day. So super cool to hear about that. Good luck on your journey. If more of you want to find out about me, you can go to skotwaldron.com. More of my interviews are there. Follow me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment on the channel. And anywhere you listen to podcasts, find me there as well. I've got a lot of episodes out there with some really fantastic people, and I would love for you to check me out there. So anyway, I hope you have all gotten something out of this. I know I have. And until next time, stay unlocked.